Hello and welcome. You're watching News 18 Global and I'm Poonam Burde. The Russia-Ukraine war is facing a definitive moment as the counteroffensive rages on. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukrainian forces had lost no positions in their counteroffensive against Russian troops, while enemy forces had sustained only losses. Now, almost a fortnight ago, the Ukrainian army launched a long-awaited counteroffensive and since then has liberated at least 8 villages around 113 square kilometers of territory. Russia, too, has launched a full-scale invasion of the neighboring Ukraine. It started in February 2022 last year. 16 months on, we're seeing that onslaught continue. That war has been waging. The aggression is only increasing. But Ukraine is not going to give up.
In some sectors, our forces are moving forward. In others, they are defending positions or resisting assaults and intensified attacks from the occupiers. We have no lost positions, only liberated ones. They only have losses. Overall, the situation is one of pressure from us, which paves the way for our flag. Blue and yellow colors will be present throughout our south and east. There are no fortifications or reserves in the evil state that can stop Ukraine because we are on our land, and that gives us the greatest strength.
Now, Ukraine is in negotiations with Western allies as far as arms manufacturing is concerned to boost production of weapons, including drones, and talks are on to sign contracts in the coming months. Now, since Russia's invasion, Ukraine has been scrambling to secure weapons ranging from munitions to rocket launchers to missiles. Kyiv is in talks with manufacturers from Germany, Italy, France and Eastern Europe for the production of weapons in Ukraine as it is expanding its drone programming for recon. Now remember, drones have been used extensively by both Moscow and Kyiv's forces during the entire course of the last 15 months.
We have in Ukraine now around 100 producers of unmanned aerial drones. And this is quite a number at different stages of production. And most of them operate in stealth mode and provide these drones directly to the military to test with immediate feedback from combat. So that's why we think Ukraine now has the best, most innovative environment for developing military drones. And that's why we're here to actually show this opportunity to all the players in this space to come invest, produce their drones in Ukraine.
Now, NATO leaders have confirmed that they will not issue an official invitation to Ukraine to join the military alliance at its summit in July. NATO Secretary General came out and said that although consultations are on regarding Ukraine's bid to join the alliance, he is not in a position to preempt the outcome of these consultations. Stoltenberg also called for all parties to stop any further escalatory steps in the Kosovo conflict, further reiterating his intention to step down as the head of NATO when the term comes to an end.
At the Vilnius summit and in the preparations for the summit, we are not discussing to issue a formal invitation. What we are discussing is how to move Ukraine closer to NATO. And there are ongoing consultations, and I'm not in a position to preempt the outcome of those consultations. We agree on that NATO's door is open. We have demonstrated that with the invitation of Finland and Sweden. We also agree on what we stated in 2008, that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance. We also agree that it's not for Russia, but for Ukraine and NATO allies to decide when the time is right to invite Ukraine. Russia doesn't have a veto over NATO decisions.
We should be prepared that the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine could still last a long time. We are preparing for that and adjusting our policies based on that.
Meanwhile, the collapse of the Kakhovka Dam in southern Ukraine has unleashed an ecological crisis. It has led to massive destruction in the Kherson region. It has contaminated drinking water supplies for thousands of people. Hundreds of dead fish were found after floodwaters receded in the nearby areas of Kherson. The collapse of the dam has also led to massive flooding, leading to the endangering of crops as well. Remember, thousands of people have already been evacuated from these areas, many of them now displaced indefinitely until they know when they can return to their homes. The crisis that not only faces Ukraine but the entire region as well, that is something that we will have to wait and watch out for as to what exactly transpires in that particular region and who is exactly responsible. We still haven't heard any responsibility being taken from either sides. Both sides keep pointing to the other as far as the explosion at that very crucial dam is concerned. Ruslan Botnik, director of Ukrainian Institute of Politics, now joins us on this broadcast. Mr. Botnik, thank you so much for speaking with us here. And I'd like to begin by asking you, Ukraine has just come out and said that the biggest blow of the counteroffensive is yet to come. How do you see that comment? What do you think the Defense Minister of Ukraine meant by that?
Hello, colleagues. Of course, Ukrainian counteroffensive operation is going on more to weeks, and we are close to the first defending line built by Russian forces last 9 months, and we have very heavy clashes, a lot of losses from the both sides. But for nowadays, we can't say how it will be ended. Will it be a successful counteroffensive operation or not? I think the next 2 or 3 weeks will show us the main trend of this counteroffensive operation. At the same time, Russia is trying to make the counteroffensive operation in the Kharkiv Oblast and in Donetsk Oblast also. So it's a big, maybe semi-final game, semi-final stage of this war for this year, after which maybe peaceful negotiation will start.
Right, those negotiations will begin, but we've seen the kind of comments that have come to the fore from both sides. Both Russia and Ukraine have been making their own sorts of claims about gains on their side, about losses on the enemy's side. Do you think this is not just about reclaiming territory or keeping the fight on, but it's also about the war of optics and winning the war of narratives that we're seeing play out across the world?
We have exhausting war or attrition war. And in this situation, the territorial changes is not so important sometimes, like an informational influence for societies, for international community. So both sides are trying to convince the international community and their own society about their victory in this situation. Talking about the geographical or territorial changes, they are not so big. These changes for the last 2 weeks is not very important and influenceable for the future of this conflict. But if you are talking about the losses, soldiers' life, about the military equipment, of course, it's a huge battle. And in such type of battle, there is one main risk for understanding. Very long time, such battle can be staying on the same position. Heavy losses, heavy clashes, and no land changes. But then something can change very fast because of attrition exhausting the resources of the sides. Nowadays we can't estimate real resources of the sides, but I think it looks like both sides take a lot of losses nowadays.
And the losses continue. They've been mounting for the last 15 months. Mr. Botnik, this war really isn't going the way Vladimir Putin and Russia thought it would. They never thought this would drag on for 15 long months. And that is a cost that they perhaps didn't preempt as well. The cost of fighting a war is also immense. And the strain is being felt by Russia because sanctions have been coming in left, right and center.
Yes, you are right. And Russia takes a lot of different type of losses, economical, social, political losses in this situation. But the problem is that for Russia and for Ukraine and even for the West, this war has an existential reason. Because if somebody will lose, it means that all the political system of this side, Ukraine or the geopolitical influence of United States or the future of the Russia, will be changed very dramatically. So even taking a lot of losses, every side will be fighting till the end of their abilities to fight, unfortunately.
Right, one last question before I let you go, Mr. Botnik. There was much deliberation and a fervent appeal that came to the fore from the Ukrainian side, but NATO has declined a formal invitation to Ukraine to its summit that's going to be held next month. Do you think this is a big setback to Ukraine's fight back against Russia?
I don't think so. Of course, now we understand that Ukraine will not be accepted in NATO in the nearest summit in Vilnius in July this year. At the same time, NATO chiefs, NATO leadership said that Ukraine will be accepted to NATO after the ending of the war. And this is a good reason for one more reason for peaceful negotiation, because ending of the war means that Ukraine may become a member of NATO and obtain the real guarantee of security, and will become maybe become of European Union member. But during the war, Ukraine can't obtain any real security guarantees, because no one side, no one country is ready to fight together, shoulder by shoulder with Ukraine, and Ukraine can become a member of a formal member of Western social, economical, or military blocs.
Right, but even as the world is standing by Ukraine, we've seen the kind of military aid, financial aid that has come to the fore from most world powers as far as Ukraine's fight is concerned. It still doesn't seem to be enough. Now Ukraine is eyeing deals and contracts as far as manufacturing of weapons, especially drones, within Ukraine is concerned. But how do you think that is going to pan out, given that every single city is facing the wrath of Russian missiles or Russian drones?
You're right. I think it's very difficult to develop, to establish in Ukraine a big military industry, but very difficult because the electricity shortage, because of airstrikes from the Russian side. But Ukraine has a big amount of post-Soviet underground nuclear shelters. And we have a lot of storage places when even nuclear weapon was gathered during Soviet times. So the physical ability to make such type of enterprises, industries, of course there is, but shortage with electricity and another problem, also economical questions, also corruption questions, I think will be a big barrier to develop a huge industry, military industry in Ukraine. More successful, more perspective, I think, to make industry clusters abroad in our neighborhoods, countries like Poland and so on.
Right, so it's imperative for Ukraine that they do get their hands on these munitions, on these arms. How they do it, that's something that we'll have to keep an eye out on, because that's something that is going to fuel this counteroffensive that has just about begun. But Ruslan Botnik, thank you so much for speaking with us here on News 18 Global. My colleague Sanjay Suri also getting us the latest from on ground as far as the war in Ukraine is concerned. And Sanjay, you've traveled to the Kherson region. Now we've seen the after effect of the dam explosion. The region is still reeling under the after effects of that. There's blame that is being passed on between both sides as far as Russia and Ukraine is concerned. But there are many reports that are now doing the rounds that if you look at the kind of footage that's coming out, the satellite imagery, Russia seems to be the one behind this, because they had the means, the motive and the opportunity to do so.
Well, we are getting reports that the dam was blown up by an explosion, and there is no evidence of an external attack by way of any missile attack or air attack on the facility. And that would suggest that this was an internal job. Now, a lot of results are before us, lethal in different ways, environmental, as we've been talking about and as we've been hearing, but talking about the strategic impact, this has had a lot of consequence on Kherson region strategically. The Dnipro is a very wide river, and when late last year the Russians retreated from the western to the eastern bank of the river, it was to set that river up as a very, very firm line of defense against any Ukrainian attack. Now, what we've seen with the explosion of the dam is that it has caused immediate damage also on the Ukrainian side, of course, but in Kherson on the eastern bank as well. And that is where a lot of Russian positions were strengthened, in fact, over months. As a result, we have some reports now that the Russians have abandoned that area militarily. We're talking about the east of the Dnipro River. and they have redeployed a lot of these forces in Zaporizhia and to an extent also in Donetsk. And we are seeing also, as a result of this, partly a very strong resistance now developing to the Ukrainian counteroffensive. We've been hearing of gains and up to 8 kilometers deep in some areas, which is not insignificant. But a lot of these gains have been in areas that were deserted and largely undefended. The Melitopol target is a long way off. And given the resistance and given the delay, we are also hearing that there is a pause now taking place in the Kherson region and north of that in Zaporizhia in the Ukrainian counteroffensive, partly as a result of the damage done by the dam burst.